So welcome back to Third Age Reforged and to another battle replay, and technically to another custom scenario, albeit this one is more out of necessity because once again we are making a return to this 8-way free-for-all. Medieval 2 still gives up its secrets all this time later, as the only way that you can do an 8-way free-for-all is by making a custom scenario first. So the way that, once again, just to explain how this was made in the first place, because I'm sure anyone who is new to this may not realise that having an 8-way battle is possible, but it is. Just got to make a custom scenario. They send their army compositions to Kuro, who then puts them into the game. Once again, we are on the arena map today, albeit it's got a sort of wintry edge to it today, which gives it a little bit more variety, of course. And it is a map that's open enough that it works for a free-for-all, but it also has a lot more features that, no matter what your playstyle is, you can take advantage of them. It's going to be an interesting one. Last time we saw Eclipse 2500 win with Dorwinian, as he sort of used his hidden Morroquendi to his advantage and brought them to bear in the late game, which is a tried and tested way of winning a free-for-all normally. We shall see if someone wins by doing such things again, or if someone is able to use brute force, or if someone is able to do what Mr. Sneakman tried to do last time and sort of circumvent fighting for as long as possible by going around the edge of the map before ultimately committing and having too much left in the tank for everyone later. This one was sent to me, I believe, by Blindness. Yes, it was Blindness. But it is actually going to be from the perspective, anyway, of Inarius today. So, we shall start off with his army. And of course, there's no real lore-friendly links to this. Obviously, there's never going to be 8 factions vying for control of something in Middle-earth, at least not in this way. So this is really just for the fun of it. Place your bets on which faction you think is going to be victorious as we go through them. And Inarius is playing as Umbar, the heavy infantry wrecking ball that they are. The Black Numenorians, he has the Ardenheim shield guard here at the front. Very good unit for holding a line. They have locked morale as well, really heavily armed, very difficult to break down. For a high TSB unit, they do cost quite a lot for a unit that doesn't do an awful lot of damage to other infantry, but to be honest with you, just having the ability to hold the line against a numerically superior force could be very, very helpful in this situation, as I imagine that's what they're going to be used for more so than circumventing any fights. And they will be backed up by a unit that can actually deal a little bit more damage, the line infantry that is the Alcarondas Legion. A very potent mix this, very hard to break down between the two of them. They're going to do a lot of damage, they're going to wear you down. Again, armour piercing could be a bit of a concern for them, but most armour piercing units have got low enough melee defense that the Alcarondas Legion can actually do good damage in return. So it is going to be quite interesting here to see how Umbar approach this, because of course they're not the most subtle faction. They do have units that can hide, but their main strength is in units like this, heavy infantry, that does the job in a much more straightforward fashion. This is one of the units they have that can hide, which is the Corsair Fencers. It might be a good idea to leave them hidden at the side of the map for later, just in case. We shall see if that is what Inarius deigns to do. They obviously throw their little throwing knives first, which are armor piercing, and then they get into melee, where they are a sort of high melee defense unit, which is kind of difficult to break down in that respect. But as with most assassin class units, if you can get a hold of them with ranged units, they will fall away very, very quickly, so you've got to use them carefully. Some Corsair Blackguards, very nice javelin unit. They also can chip in melee when they're out of ammunition. A very, very decent unit this, and obviously against high profile targets, their javelins can be very, very useful with their barbs on the end, the little hooked tips. And of course the Harbingers of Castamere, a very, very strong unit of heavy swordsmen, bodyguards here. This isn't where the general is today, so he's probably going to use his infantry more aggressively like that and have the Harbingers just at the centre. Obviously an incredibly powerful infantry unit, even if there are relatively few of them, mixed in with all of this quality. Unless they get flanked, they should have nothing to worry about really. Meanwhile, his cavalry force, he's gone for a big cavalry force, which in an 8-way free-for-all like this is very understandable, even if Umbar do have a decent cav force to be sure, but it's extremely expensive to field all of it. So Inarius has taken a bit of a risk, but I think it's worthwhile. The melee cavalry, you can see the general in the background there. Castamere is going to be riding with the Alcarondas Faithful, the melee knights, which is probably the safest place for him, because it means if he does get engaged by other cavalry units, he should be just fine. For the most part anyway. The Lance Knights, the Warlords here, can be used a little bit more aggressively without the General in them as well. Certainly one of the more damaging options Umbar has, and they will be riding with some Ardenheim Lancers, or Ardenheim Lancers, that's it. It's going to take me a while to get used to the proper pronunciation, I think. But yes, much like the spears on foot, they're very heavily armoured and shielded. Unlike the spears on foot, however, it is possible, very possible actually, to break them. It's one of their main problems, ironically enough, for a higher tier cavalry unit. But they can still do a lot of damage off the charge. And he's got some rangers hidden, of course, as well. If you can bring rangers, because they can hide and because of the amount of potential they have for dealing damage, you have to bring them in a situation like this. Moving northward, we have King Ammar, who's playing as the Orcs of the Misty Mountains. So the main thing the Orcs of the Misty Mountains will offer you in this situation is, of course, a lot of disposable manpower. So it's not going to be the end of the world if you start losing units early in the fight, even if it is a large-scale free-for-all, because you have plenty of manpower to burn. He's got some heavy goblin archers, which can be used as sort of just a skirmish force to engage the enemy, force them to do something, force them to respond. They're not really going to be useful for much else. They are a little bit more heavily armoured than the regular goblin archers, of course, but the difference is somewhat negligible, really, because you use them for the same sort of purpose anyway. Even if these are slightly better at it, they are also slightly more expensive, as you'd expect. Heavy goblin spears, a central part of any Misty Mountains army because of the AP they offer, which offsets the spear malus. Definitely a very good and definitely the Misty Mountains' best central unit, in my opinion. The Mountaineer at Coast are all well and good, but you sort of detract from the horde mentality that the Misty Mountains have if you're reliant on a unit like that. And the heavy goblin spears are much better, even at fighting infantry, really, because of that AP, than the heavy goblin infantry. But they are more expensive as a result. The heavy goblin infantry are very, very cheap. Going to be backed up by the heavy goblin halberdiers, gives them somewhat of a phalanx. It's not going to be as good as pikes, but it's armour piercing and it helps shore up the line a little bit. And there are so many of them that it can be quite effective, but don't expect them to work miracles. The fearmongers are a little bit better at that sort of thing. They behave a little bit more like, I've called them ghetto fountain guard in the past, and I do think that is an apt comparison, really, because they're not as good as fountain guard, obviously, but they do a similar job. They're armour piercing, they can hold the line in the middle of the Misty Mountains formation very, very effectively, and they're much better than the heavy goblins that they fight alongside. Got some warg riders, and well, 2 units of warg riders actually, so some cavalry presence, anti-cavalry as well, so useful. I'm a little bit surprised not to see the Bolgs champions, if I'm being honest. I think that would have been a given in this battle, but it does look as though he has opted for some other things. The Goblin King's bodyguard are here, which is where the general is. Safe enough place to put them. Definitely the more resilient of the 2 foot-based bodyguards that the goblins have. And there's definitely going to be some hidden units around here as well, because this is nowhere near enough to cover all of the funds that he would have been given. And I would imagine that there is going to be plentiful hidden goblins as well, so I think he's gone for a more numbers-based approach, but we'll see when he decides to use his hidden units. Up here in the very north we have Mirkwood, played by Eclipse 2500, so I imagine he is going to try and win the battle here, as he did last time, by utilising hidden units, because that is what Mirkwood do really very, very well indeed. We shall see if that is the case. He's got some Elders of the Elven King over here, which is where Thranduil is. Obviously they've got their Silverthorn arrows, so they can knock, with their high mass projectiles, they can knock over units, even trolls. That can be very, very useful, and of course they're very deadly in melee as well. He also has the Mighty Palace Guard, ever the fan favourite, really. They don't have the armour upgrade on this occasion. They don't necessarily need it to be super effective, though obviously really, really strong in melee. Armour piercing, anti-cavalry bonus. They're probably the most versatile of all the bodyguard units of this type, to be honest, with all of this going for them. Even if they're not as specialised as something like the Noldorin Blade Masters or Pharazim Sword Masters. Over here, a couple of hidden units, Greenwood Rangers and the Greenwood Watchers, so an assassin unit, very similar to the Corsair Fencers in function. Throw a projectile, an armour piercing one, and then run in and try and stab them up. And some Greenwood Rangers, obviously Elven Rangers have got that little bit extra bite. Very, very effective, but Mirkwood maybe a little bit less capable of defending themselves in an atrocious fight than Umbar are, so it'll be interesting to see if they can remain hidden for a long period of time. Woodland Protectors, Spears, Javelin Hybrid, useful in this situation to deal with enemy cavalry that might try and harass Mirkwood's position, which may uncover their hidden units, which would be disastrous for Eclipse, of course, considering that's how he obviously intends to win the fight. Ents do give Mirkwood the bludgeon if they need it. It'll be interesting to see if they do. Definitely hard to bring down. Some Sindar of the Girdle and some Huntsmen of Amon Lank also give Mirkwood that aggressive cavalry edge. The Sindar of the Girdle are not quite the powerhouses they used to be. They used to be pretty much, arguably, the best unit of knights in the game because of their ridiculously high melee defense and the fact that they had an anti-cavalry bonus which was significantly higher than normal lance knights. Made them very difficult to kill. Even if you got an anti-cavalry unit in, their high melee defense meant it was hard to land a hit. It's not so much the case anymore. It's still their focus, but it's not to the point of being overpowered. So they are fragile in some respects, and you do need to look after them. Then, over here in the corner, we have Aqua, who is playing as Dale. Definitely a different philosophy to them than Mirkwood. They're much more up front with their skirmishing, and they have a much more heavily armoured front line. Dismounted Earls of Dale, will be, you know, a good unit for holding the line, especially with Lake Town pikemen backing them up with the phalanx. The Barding Herd, one of my favourite units of halberdiers because they're so heavily armoured that archers can't kill them off too easily, and they offer all the same benefits that halberdiers do with their AP. Bardian Marksmen, one of the best skirmish archers in the game, and seeing as Umbar haven't brought the Balakith today, they should be fairly dominant. The Dalian Bowmen as well. Mirkwood don't really want to be skirmishing with Dale, because Dale, well, they don't have the same damage or the same quality. They can just outlast Mirkwood if they bring enough archers, and that may be the case here. Some Swordmasters of Esgaroth with the armour upgrade just in behind them, giving them the same heavier look as the marksmen in front. Some Dalian Royal Guard, obviously a nice unit of heavy swordsmen in melee, but first and foremost they're very heavily armoured bodyguard tier archers. Bardian Marksmen, all Bardian Marksmen, so yeah, big skirmish presence here from Dale as you'd expect. Swordmasters of Esgaroth, he has got some Dalian Bowmen over here as well, backing up the Earls of Dale. The Earls of Dale want to be a little bit careful about going into the Sindar of the Girdle. They have numbers on their side, but it's a dicey situation, and close to the Mirkwood javelins it won't be good for them. A little bit further south we have the Realm of Lindon, played by Engspitz. Definitely an interesting choice. Lindon with their light armour definitely have a very clear weakness. I do like Lindon, but they're definitely one of the factions I'm the worst at playing as, really. 4 Lindon pikemen on the front line. Good for holding, as long as they don't get shot up. Obviously that's pretty much the case for every Lindon infantry unit. They're really good in melee if you can get them there because of their really high melee defense. But their main problem is getting to melee without getting savaged by archers, and that's especially true for the pikemen. 4 Lindon Marines, spear javelin hybrids as well, similar to the Woodland Protectors from Mirkwood, only again with Lindon's flavour of having less armour but being that, you know, having that high melee defense. More 4 Lindon Marines, the mighty Horse Lords of Ulmo with Círdan, the shipwright here as well. Really, really strong. You know, as far as like damage dealing knights go, lance knights, the Horse Lords of Ulmo could be seen as the best there is, but their lack of a shield and more fragile natures, or more fragile nature in that way, does mean that all around they have a very clear weakness, much like the rest of Lindon, but in the right hands they can be absolutely devastating. They're extremely fast as well, very difficult to catch. More 4 Lindon pikes, so a lot of 4 Lindon units here at the heart of his army. He's got some Harlindon infantry as well. As far as line infantry goes, again, really good in melee, but even with the shield, they can be vulnerable to arrow fire at range. Mithlond Lancers, so they have the javelins, as well as being lance cavalry when they expend all their ammo. And also they have the Harlindon Riders, which are the horse archer variant, which I believe is spear cab in melee, which again, very multifaceted. Lindon are very good with their hybrid units. And he's also got some Mithlond pikemen mixed in with his Harlindon infantry over here, so he's going harder in the south than in the north. He's just sort of covering all his bases. And he's got some Harlindon Guard who are already in range, actually, of the enemy, as Lindon square off with Gondor, played by the Gondor Mafia. It's going to be interesting here because Gondor actually will probably want to keep this fight at range for as long as possible, because in a skirmish fight they'll really fancy their chances against Lindon. In melee, significantly less so. Their armour will help them, but Lindon's qualities will ultimately be too much if they advance too quickly, I think. Gondor spears fully upgraded on the front, they should be good at mitigating the damage from the arrows coming their way. Nimlothian Honour Guard as well will be really, really good. You know, they may be AP, which is not really Lindon's focus, especially with none of the Noldorin units on the field today. But they'll still be very good at holding the line, to be honest, as will the Wardens of the White Tower in behind. Axemen of Lasarnak, not going to be useful against Lindon at all on this occasion because they don't have any of the Noldorin, which is the only unit that the armour piercing of these axes would be useful against. They can still be useful for their base attack, which, to be honest, a lot of the other Gondor units will probably lack in melee. But again, they'll probably be wishing they brought the Ravenhelms instead, which, to be fair, they have. And the Ravenhelms will be significantly better, they will at least compete. We also have the Citadel Guard on the flank. Again, the AP won't be all that useful, which is what really sets them apart, but they're still a higher tier spear unit which can hold the line for a long time. It's worth saying that Lindon don't really have the most options for AP outside of their javelins, which the javelins will not have the easiest time getting into melee, you'd imagine. Civilians are over here as well. Having said that, just looking at the situation here, it doesn't look like Gondor have got much in the way of archers at all. In fact, they've got none on their front line. They've got no line archers at all. They might have some Athelian Rangers hidden away somewhere, but if you knew you didn't bring archers, I think it's a highly questionable decision to square off willingly against Lindon, because you know who you're going to be up against based on the colour of the deployment zones you're near. To willingly go into a fight against Lindon with a rush without really having archer support is a weird one. We'll see if the Gondor Mafia lives to regret that, like I think he will, because Lindon should have all the advantages in that particular fight. Then we have Mr. Sneakman, who is memeing it up once again as Dunland. He has got some Dunland Spearmen on the front. Once again, very much a numbers-focused army. There's going to be a lot of hidden units as well, Blackwolds, all that sort of thing. Riders of Orthanc, perhaps? No, just Warg Riders, standard Warg Riders. He does have the Spears of Orthanc at the very least, arguably the single best unit of, well, I think probably the Blacklock Engineers take the best crossbow designation home, to be honest with you, but it is somewhat debatable because the Spears of Orthanc are so good in melee as well. But really the standout units from Dunland are the Orthanc units, the mounted and dismounted, but he only has the dismounted today. Got some veterans in there as well, but his army will reveal itself pretty quickly. And the unlucky soul that drew the short straw and had to deploy in the middle because of the way that deployment zones work is WK, who's playing as Mordor. He's got some Moran on infantry, perhaps not willing to let Mr. Sneakman just circumvent everything around the outside of the map like last time, because he is directly pointing that way. Moran on infantry, troll drummers, Moran on halberdiers, some orc javelins back here as well, and a pretty comprehensive force over here as well. He's got some maulers, which aren't the most impressive thing, but 2 units by the looks of things of upgraded temple executioners, and backed up by some Ardenium lancers, which obviously again have the green capes, unlike the burgundy ones that those from Umbar wield. And probably there's a lot of hidden units in these trees in the middle as well, which possibly is Mordor's saving grace. If everyone fights around the outside of the map, he could hide some units right in the middle in plain sight, so to speak, and he could be just fine. So place your bets on who you think is going to win. Generally speaking, whoever can avoid the fights, whoever can utilise hidden units and the like, tend to do quite well in free-for-all. So I'm actually going to sort of stick my neck out and say I think Eclipse is in a pretty good place to win this one again, to be honest with you, because I think Mirkwood have got a lot of the qualities that you need in this kind of fight to go on to win. More so, I think, even than Dorwinion, because I think Dorwinion, they're not quite as good a faction as Mirkwood, I don't think. I think Dorwinion have got some good stuff, but he won based on the back of his hidden horse archers last time, whereas this time he could win on the back of some hidden units which are a little bit more nasty. It's definitely a focus of Mirkwood after all, but without further ado, let's begin. And I do think the first epicenter of action here is going to be between Lindon and Gondor, and I mean, just the fact that Lindon are here, ready, pikes in tow, it's going to be tough. I mean, they're going to charge right towards one another. I mean, they have to. Gondor don't have a choice. If they stand at range, while they can absorb arrow fire, they won't want to. You can immediately see the Lindon cavalry moving forward. They need to be really careful, though. I mean, Engsvitz is being very aggressive. He's throwing javelins in. He's doing some damage to the Citadel Guard, but he does ultimately get caught by the Citadel Guard, which is a bit of a disaster, to be honest with you. He doesn't want to stick around here. High damage infantry, high damage spears against that cavalry. In come the Horse Lords of Ulmo, who are charging in. Again, a bit of a limp-wristed charge, mind you, and there are Gondor spears nearby as well. I mean, he doesn't want to take too much in the way of damage. There was a lot of dead horsemen, but the javelin volley was pretty nasty as well. In fact, let's go down to half speed already, because things are going to get pretty spicy right from the get-go here. Horse Lords of Ulmo are going to try and force their way through. I mean, this is true, like, a lot of Gondor's anti-cavalry oomph, so to speak, is on the front line at this point, so if Lindon can get their cavalry around the flank, especially the Horse Lords of Ulmo, hammer and anvil charge is going to be brutal. Absolutely brutal. Also, there is javelin support from Lindon, which Gondor simply do not have. Having said that, a lot of these 4 Lindon Marines have been engaged in melee already, and there are Gondor spears. More worryingly, though, there are shock infantry units on the front line who, even though the armour piercing is a waste, they will be able to defeat hybrid units because of their high base attack. Maybe not the best engagements here from Lindon, you have to say, and Dale are just sort of watching the carnage unfold, and you can see over here actually immediately that Misty Mountains and Umbar squaring off against one another again, as Mirkwood begin to make their way over here as well. So Umbar going toe-to-toe with the Misty Mountains, Mirkwood looking to maybe come in from the rear of the Misty Mountains as well, just as Dale is looking to do so against Lindon on the other side. And immediately as well you can see that things are getting underway for pretty much everyone very quickly in this battle, I have to say, as both Mordor and Dunland collide with one another, as well as the frames take a bit of a nosedive. There's a lot going on throughout the battle after all. Dunman Spearmen, Dunman Pikemen, definitely a numbers game over here between Mordor and Dunland. It's one that you would back Mordor in just because they have a few more options that are a little bit more impressive. You can see over there as well, orc fodder revealing themselves from the tree line. If the Temple Executioners get on the front line, it's going to be a problem for Dunland, because they will then be entirely reliant on their Dunman pikemen. Having said that, I mean, Mordor don't really have pikes of their own, so these cheap pikes could be really, really useful from the front. Mordor need to wrap around, really, but against this many Dunlanders, that's not really the easiest task. Especially with wargs marshalling the back lines, their crossbows waiting as well, just in case the Ardenium Lancers make their way around. Blackwards will be good against the Morannon as well, so perhaps actually Dunland are in a good place, we'll see. The orc fodder looking to overlap. Meanwhile, heading over to this side of proceedings, we can see Gondor waiting. I mean, if Gondor can continue their forward momentum here, it could be really, really nasty for Lindon, honestly. I don't think they managed to get themselves set at all well, Langswitz, and he may carry his destruction with him as a result of that. You can see that their front line is actually being overwhelmed at this point in several areas. He needs to start using his Horse Lords of Ulmo to good effect here. I mean, he's got some Harland infantry in behind the line. Now is the time for his cavalry to start being deployed, because if you can get some hammer and anvil charges, Gondor, you would imagine, will fall apart. But the clock is ticking, because you can see Dale are approaching in the background, and Lindon need to get through Gondor, really. There is a case for saying, even, that maybe you should sequester your cavalry away in one of the corners under tree cover already, because with Dale arriving, your fate is kind of already sealed, whether you're Gondor or Lindon. But at least Lindon have got some cavalry they can use to go into the corner with. Gondor, less lucky. They're almost entirely made up of a rush infantry focus, which maybe is not the best idea for a battle like this. The Wardens of the White Tower are right in and amongst it, however, really doing their thing. A little bit surprised to not see any Wardens of Elos Tyrion. Some 4 Lindon Marines are over here, and some 4 Lindon Pikes are there, so Gondor crunching in from this side. You can see the Horse Lords of Ulmo are now trying to get some charges off. Are they trying to break the civilians? Well, I mean, there's no real need. They're going to try, I think, and charge in over here. It's rare to see Lindon, so I'm glad to see them. They're definitely the hardest of the Elven factions to play, I think. They don't have a lot of the same creature comforts as the other elves have. But at their very best, they can be very hard to deal with because of their high melee defense and their hybrid units. Gondor, though, pushing in from the side. Meanwhile, over on this side of things, the Misty Mountains and Umbar aggressively moving towards one another as well. This is a problem for the Misty Mountains, though. The Huntsmen of Amon Lank are up here, so they are going to be able to charge into Castamir's Rangers, because those Castamir's Rangers would tear through all the heavy goblins with brutal efficiency, you'd have to say. But Mirkwood are not being discriminatory here. They are going to be going after both the Misty Mountains and Umbar, trying to kill them both in equal measure. They brought over a lot of stuff, but I would imagine there's probably hidden stuff in the north end of the map still from Eclipse. And that's one of the reasons why I would back Mirkwood to achieve glory in this particular battle. As the Warlords come in, they'll have much more muscle to them than the Huntsmen of Amon Lank, so they will need to retreat. And ultimately, not many of the Rangers died. It wasn't the best charge, but it was a good idea, even if the terrain wasn't quite right for them. On the front line, though, quality is winning the day here over quantity. The heavy goblins are doing their best. They've got a lot of AP between the spears and the halberds, but ultimately the quality levels are just there's too much of a disparity there. The Ardenium and the Alcarondas Legion, simply too much. Corsair fencers, point blank, firing their throwing daggers. This is probably where the Misty Mountains have got their, well, they are doing the best, because they've got their White Uruk Fearmongers, and I think they don't have their heavy goblin, not their heavy goblin, their Goblin King bodyguard over here, I don't think, but Harbingers of Castamir are numbers question over here, but the Misty Mountains are doing really quite well. Wargs are going to try and overlap the lines, but now Mirkwood are here. So the Misty Mountains drawing the short straw, really, because they're caught between the two factions, but everyone who's got all their troops over here, they are going all in, to be fair. Inarius hasn't held anything back either, so he doesn't have hidden units waiting in the wings, really. Got some Corsair Blackguards ready to fire a payload. And a lot of the goblins are sort of squeezing their way through the line, and I mean, here in the middle, Umbar are doing quite well, but on the flanks, things are a little bit more even. But with the Castamir's Rangers firing, I mean, you can see, actually, I thought actually that the Wargs and the Huntsmen of Amon Lank would combine their efforts there, but that is not going to be the case. Elders of the Elven King are going to try and seize the high ground. If this were the Sindar of the Girdle, they would be feeling quite confident, but seeing as it is the Huntsmen of Amon Lank, oh, there goes Círdan, caught by the Gondor spears. Yeah, with the charge between the two, you back the Warlords of Umbar there. The Huntsmen of Amon Lank just too lightweight. Where are the Sindar of the Girdle? That is the question. They're not over here, by the looks of things, which is interesting. Again, Umbar and the Misty Mountains have been fighting for slightly longer, but Mirkwood don't have their entire strength over here. But Eclipse has made his choice. The Greenwood Rangers are firing in, and again, they can fire into that blob freely because friendly fire is not an issue for them there. Meanwhile, how goes it on the front line over here? Not well for Mordor. Dunland, and again, it's the pikes, you would have to say. That is the reason. So many cheap pikes, and Mordor just haven't been able to deal with that. And as a result, this numbers-focused brawl that has been happening here in the middle of the map is going to go the way of Dunland, which Mordor getting outclassed in those states. It does go to show that if you mass up pikes and the enemy doesn't have a way of dealing with them with some really good ranged units, which Mordor did not choose to invest in here by the looks of things. They've got some javelins which could have been utilised, but at this point it's a little bit too late. If you don't have a way to deal with pikes and you just charge into them from the front, even if they're cheap pikes, they can really do very, very nicely. And it's one of the reasons why a pike-focused meta often arises around Medieval 2 based projects. And it is most certainly the case here. Spears of Orthanc also mucking in melee, pulling out their spears, and they will carve through orc fodder very easily, as will the Black Bolts, very one-sided. The javelins might be looking to get in from the flank, but I think Mordor are staring down the barrel of defeat here. They've still got some Ardenine Lancers that they can use later, but we shall have to wait and see. Some Warg Riders from Dunland have actually been over here, and Lindon are the ones that are going to be defeated ultimately, which will be disappointing for Engsvitz, I think, because considering the nature of the fight, he didn't even have to face down Gondor's heavily armoured archers, and in the end, perhaps he just didn't have enough on the front line, perhaps he didn't have enough quality, perhaps he tried to be a little bit, spread his strengths too thin. Without any of the Noldor in, he just didn't have the muscle to withstand Gondor. I think part of it as well was that when the engagement happened, Lindon just weren't sat properly, and Gondor's heavy nature was simply allowed them to roll through them, so Lindon ultimately defeated, which was not what I was expecting. But there you go, Gondor showing their muscle and Lindon falling away. They still have a few units on the field, but I mean, 8 Warswords of Ulmo, the most they can be at this point I think is an annoyance for the other factions. We shall see that. Dale. Probably the faction which has seen the least amount of action so far. None, in fact, you could say. So they still have pretty much a full army available to them. And they do have all of the skirmish power they need to basically force Gondor onto the defensive as much as they need to. So Dale probably the happiest of all of the factions so far, just because they haven't needed to land a blow on their enemies. Mirkwood as well, I would imagine, have got some hidden units, some shenanigans. There's still some more fodder back here for WK and his Mordor force. If he's placing his hopes on fodder, that may very well end in tears. Meanwhile, the goblins still over on this flank, still pushing forwards. It's still going to be quite hard for them to move in like that, though. The Greenwood Watchers are over here, but the Harbingers of Castamere intercepting them. Corsair Fencers doing their thing. There's still 10 Ents left alive. One of them is sort of being left behind, still waddling around in and amongst the action. Still in the background is the Greenwood Rangers, is it not? Yes, it is. Firing into this blob of heavy Umbar infantry, which is going to be a problem for them. Mirkwood identifying Umbar as the bigger threat here, which they should, to be honest with you. A lot of the Misty Mountains forces are starting to rouse at this stage. Umbar definitely the bigger problem. You can see here the Castamere's Rangers pulling back under cover of the Alcarondas faithful. Huntsmen of Amon Lank are over here with the Elders of the Elven King. There's a lot of dead Umbar and Mirkwood cavalry over here, though. So both sides paying for this high ground, but Umbar ultimately do surrender it to the Elders of the Elven King, so they will need to move away from this position. They cannot stay here, Umbar, if they hope to be victorious. We shall see if Umbar are capable of that, announcer. This announcer seems to be the one that talks the most, as we have learnt in the past. Elven King's Palace Guard are in here, and with how scattered Umbar are, they represent a real danger, to be honest with you, because if Umbar cannot reorganise and overwhelm them, they will carve their way through a lot of their manpower. Their armour piercing as well, so very, very nasty unit. Alcarondas Legion moving into the backfield. I think they are trying to move through. There are still some Misty Mountains units here, but you can see the goblins most certainly running for the hills now. Let's go back up to 1 speed. The highly chaotic first phase of the battle is drawing to a close, you'd have to say, as the first engagements yield their victors, and more noticeably the losers. The Misty Mountains and Lindon, they may still have a part to play in the later game, of course. They're not out of proceedings yet, but the initial engagements didn't go very well for them. Gondor are very heavily damaged, as are Umbar. Mirkwood, it's kind of hard to tell because we don't know how many of their units are still sequestered away in the north. Mordor, here in the middle, what are they doing? I think they pulled away from Dunland after the engagement to the front of the pikes went so poorly for them. Maulers are on the way over. They've still got Temple Executioners in numbers. So the pikes weren't able to deal much damage to them, as you would expect, considering the heavy plate they wear and the low damage of the pikes, but they were never going to win by just mulching into the front of Dunland's line like that. The Troll Drummers are on the way, and actually Mordor's Remnant are on the way over there, which is more bad news technically for Umbar, but also for Mirkwood, because I think they would probably be hoping that this fight would be done with by then. Dunland, meanwhile, will be very happy with their day's work on the front line. Yes, they took losses. You can see there's a lot of Dunland veterans that are dead now, but that engagement didn't go well for Mordor. Dunland can count themselves as having a minor victory here early on. Meanwhile, 4 Lindon scouts revealing themselves, but getting pushed back by the Dalian bowmen, so Lindon did have a unit that was hidden, but it's a unit of lower end cavalry at best. A unit that can hide anywhere, but is not a match winner by any means. Lindon are going to the corner. Gondor are actually forming up here, which is brave. I mean, you can see that they did take a lot of losses going into Lindon, as well you would expect, considering the brutal nature of the fight, but they've formed up now, and they don't really stand a chance against the numerically superior Dalian host, especially not if Dale elect to skirmish with them first. And it may not be the worst idea, to be honest with you, because at this stage in the battle I don't think having a heavy duty skirmish line is really all that important. And it may be the services of stuff like the Bardian Marksman in melee later on, which may come more to the forefront. So just utilising your ammunition to wear Gondor down and try and make it as efficient a fight as possible might be how you look at this. It'd be interesting to see how Aqua handles that, because of course Gondor have to move towards him or away from him if he starts to skirmish with them, and the closer they get, the more that stuff like the Keldon River Patrol with their javelins could come into play.
He flees the field of battle and abandons his men.
It's not WK's general, he's still roaming around. Umbar are leaving the area as Mirkwood claim this little hill. This is the sort of thing in a free-for-all which can draw the ire of a few other players, but we shall see if that turns out to be the case. Mordor have regrouped, Umbar have regrouped, as have Mirkwood, and they're not going to sit on the hill, which is nice. Dunland have regrouped, so all of the armies over here pretty much have regrouped, and to be fair, over here as well. But it is going to be sooner rather than later that Dale and Gondor begin a new round of hostilities, and this is one that Dale will be thoroughly dominant in, you would imagine. What are Gondor going to do? I mean, they don't really have any choice at this point. They can only charge in and hope to be as big a pain for Dale as they can be. Keldon River Patrol are reloading, but I think they left it a little bit too long there. A few javelins are forthcoming, and now forward come the missiles as well. Ooh, this is poor from Aqua. He can pretty much choose to approach this battle however he likes. If he ends up losing his javelins as a result, I think he's hoping to, there's an expression, have your cake and eat it, which is to be a little bit more, you know, you want everything to go your way, and Gondor are most certainly making it so that Dale cannot engage in such skullduggery. One last hurrah for Gondor as they charge forward in a similar manner as they did against Lindon, but their manpower is greatly reduced. Guardian Marksmen are shaken. Dale needs to be a little bit more on the ball than this. I'm never that forgiving of players that have a situation which is set up for them to be really dominant in, and then they kind of fall flat on their face, which is exactly what Dale are doing here. Their skirmish line is being savaged by the Gondorian infantry here. fair play to Gondor. He's not going to win this battle, but he's going to make Dale's job for the late game harder by doing this. Dalian bowmen warding off the Lindon cavalry, as are the Earls of Dale. But let's see what's going on over here. I mean, now the Dalian infantry does move forward, but they were caught very flat-footed there, Dale, and their Bardian marksmen have been absolutely butchered. And that's a real shame for Dale, honestly, because they are still a presence for the late game. But having a really healthy skirmish line late on could have been absolutely vital, and that may no longer be the case. The 4 Lindon scouts also coming in to charge, doing their old enemy Gondor a bit of a favour, lending them a bit of a hand would be the right thing to say, as they charge into the Keldon River Troll, doing a bit of damage. But again, I've never been a massive fan of the scout class of cavalry. Yes, they can hide anywhere, but Rohan and Lindon are the only two which have this kind of cavalry, and it's not really that impactful. In come the Earls. They will charge into the rear of Gondor's line, I would assume. And, you know, Dale are going to be dominant in this fight, but Gondor have managed to do something, which is more than it looked like they were going to be able to do initially. Barding Herd are going to be really good against these Gondorian units. Nimlothian Honour Guard sitting in the middle of the Gondorian line. Sat there. Very strong. Here come the Earls. What are they going to do? I mean, they're not Lance Cavalry, so the charge is not going to be quite as impactful, but the Gondor Mafia is turning around. He is doing the right things here. Yeah, those Gondor Spears break. We need to get out of there quickly, though, because if they don't, the Nimlothians will start to pick them off. But yes, Gondor on their last legs. Over here, meanwhile, Mirkwood. Yep, there goes Gondor's general. Dunland against Mirkwood. And to be honest, Dunland have got the numbers here to make life very awkward. The pikemen are trying to guard from the flank. The Adunheim Lancers really biting off more than they could chew there. Umbar going up against Mordor, so it's all change really in terms of who is fighting who. I wouldn't have really recommended this fight for Umbar. They're far too densely packed. Mordor's cavalry doing a good job, and Mordor can use their phalanx, their halberds, to their advantage here. So Mordor and Dunland, having fought one another, all of a sudden looking pretty good. I would imagine, like I said, Mirkwood will pull out some hidden units later. This guy, I swear, it's always this announcer. I don't know what it is with this announcer, but he just can't seem to shut the hell up in every game. Adding him to the game was a mistake. He goes on about the Holy Cross too much for it to be thematic anyway, so he should probably just be taken out. Elders of the Elven King firing away. Greenwood Rangers getting charged by the Warg Riders, which is a real problem. I mean, if they stay in melee, it's obviously not going to go very well for them at all, but at the very least they're stopping the Rangers from firing, and there are pikes over here who are broken, to be fair, but these, there are Ents, but they've taken damage. Stuff like Blackwalds are going to be really good against Ents. Pikes, however, are not, but they are forcing the Elders of the Elven King onto the back foot. Veterans are moving forward in support of the pikes. I like this from Mr. Sneakman. What have we got going on here? More Blackwalds, more pikes. His Spears of Orthanc are still here. Dunland may be very simplistic in how they work, but I mean, you've still got to be prepared for the fact that this is how they're going to roll. They're always going to be a faction with horde mentality. I don't think Mirkwood were quite ready for it. Wargs charging it. Again, the Elders of the Elven King will easily be able to withstand this assault so far, but they're being engaged, and the rest of Mirkwood's army that are over here getting dealt with. What's this over here? Routing units. Meanwhile, what's going on with Umbar? An ill-advised assault from Inarius is going to end in tears, I think, because Mordor had a bit of a tough time of it earlier on, but they're going to redeem themselves here, I think, by finishing off the main body of the Black Númenórean force. There's still cavalry. Ardenheim Lancers from both factions, interestingly enough. But WK has got 2 units. There goes Castamere. What's left of the Alcarondas faithful killed by what was left of the Orc Maulers. And the Troll Drummers here, of course, along with the Temple Executioners, mean Mordor are never going to rout, so no problem. But Mordor need to be quick, because Dale are on the way, and they should still have enough ammunition to be a real problem. This is probably the army that most of the other players at this point are looking at and thinking, we probably need to be doing something about Dale, otherwise they could very well end up with the victory because we just don't have the strength to withstand them, and such a high amount of skirmish presence in the late game. Dunland's pikemen are not going to be good against that. What is going to be good against that? One-on-one at this point. They might need to combine their strengths. In go the Argonian Lancers again, trying to finish off what remains of Umbar, which at this stage shouldn't be too big of an ask, to be honest. What's that going on over there? Horses of Ulmo are still alive, 7 of them, 7 Lance Knights. Who knows? Could be very important. Routing veterans, there's still some heavy gunmen halberdiers back here, amusingly enough. So I mean, I think pretty much every faction still has something to bring to the table here at this point, except for maybe Gondor. But even Gondor, though, are still here technically. There's some Keldon River Troll, but I mean, 6 Wardens of the White Tower who are fleeing, but not routing. They're just going to sequester themselves away. Not exactly match winners, but everyone is still standing. To varying extents. All the way from Dale with pretty much their full army to Gondor with only 6 soldiers left. Again, another charge from Mordor's subjugated Black Númenóreans. Umbar's dream of bringing about a new age coming to its end, really. They may actually be the first faction to completely fall. It's a pretty foolhardy assault into Mordor, to be honest with you, considering the damage they'd already taken, and considering the kind of units they had left. They were never going to fare very well against the Temple Executioners. Dale's archers are now in place, however, and this is bad news for Mordor, because they are in the firing line. The Orc Maulers will fall very quickly. They're a very poor unit under arrow fire. Umbar, though, just sat, continuing to be a pain. Mirkwood doing what they do best and trying to kite, but it's not going to go very well for them, is it really? Spears of Orthanc getting into melee. If Mr. Sleekman is doing his due diligence, he should probably... Well, there goes Thranduil. The general is gone. But he should probably have a little route around up here, because I still think Merc would have got something. Like, that didn't seem like their whole army. They had all of their expensive units pretty much, but it didn't seem like their whole army. They might have a couple of units of Woodland Round Axemen or something, which could come in from left field late on to catch everyone out. Mirkwood, to be fair, like, you always expect that sort of shenanigans from Mirkwood. More so. Well, I say more so, probably Dorwinian as well you expect it because of all their Morroquendi that can hide, so by picking this faction, Flips's motivations were laid bare, so I'd be extremely surprised if he didn't have hidden units up there. Dunland have got a pretty decent force in terms of numbers still. Spears of Orthanc as well with the quality, some mobility from the wargs, but I have to say, the ones in pole position at the moment will be Dale, because once again Mordor are coming forward with those javelins, ripping through the maulers. And you can see there some archers coming, well, arrows coming in from all sides, really. Once again, it's a very similar assault that happened against Gondor. This time Dale are a little bit more on top of things, however, and they get their dismounted earls and their Lake Town pikemen to the front line in double quick time, as well as the barding herd from the side there, which is good. But yeah, very similar to how the Gondorian assault went. Really, it was just Mordor desperately charging forwards, trying to do something against Dale, but I think people have been sleeping on Dale for too long in this fight, and they have sort of catapulted themselves into pole position to go on to win this, because regardless of what Mirkwood may have hidden in the north, regardless of what anyone may have hidden at this point, Dale still have a full army. No one else does. Barding herd are pursuing what remains of those halberds. They still have a skirmish line as well, which all of the advantages are theirs, really. I would keep these barding herd in melee with the troll drummers, to be honest with you, because they are halberds, and the troll drummers are weak enough that halberds should be a good substitute for heavy axemen against a unit like this. Mordor in their death throes, you would have to say. Bardian marksmen continuing to fire. Keldon River Patrol in melee with Temple Executioners, which even only 11 of them, the balance of forces is still evenly matched, but on the front line here they are being overwhelmed. unfortunately for them, as the sword blows continue to rain down. They may very well put a decent dent in Dale though, just from sheer quality alone. There goes Mordor's general. The Earls doing their thing. That is exactly what they're for after all, heavily armoured melee cavalry hunting down enemy cavalry forces. And Aqua has used them well so far, you'd have to say. Getting a nice hammer and anvil strike earlier, getting them out before the Nimlothians did too much damage to them, but yeah, you can see how quickly Mordor had been wrapped up there. It was a forlorn hope, certainly. And the Horsesword of Umbar, again, not a good cavalry unit to be around archer lines such as this. Dale will be feeling pretty happy so far. Lake Town pikemen moving across. Swordmasters, they've got a good mix of units as well at this point. Line infantry, pikemen, shock infantry, archers. I think javelin-wise they're probably low on ammo at this stage. But what remains of all the other factions at this point should be looking at this and thinking we need to combine our efforts to try and stop this monster from the north. Dragon Slayers indeed. There's a lot of Earls still alive as well. I mean, the Misty Mountains revealing some forces here. And this, yeah, Misty Mountains were a force that should have had hidden units, and indeed they do in large quantities actually. Goblin infantry, Blackback mountain berserkers, mountain orc berserkers, two units of them, and the goblin infantry is obviously not going to do much, but it does still help fill out the line. But more worryingly for Dale, there's a lot of AP over here, a lot of good AP, which is going to be good against Barding Her, it's going to be good against Earls. It's going to be good against their archers should they be drafted into melee. And what remains of his heavy goblin halberdiers as well, which he has managed to keep alive, is going to make their way over here as well. Are Mirkwood going to reveal more of the same? Or are they going to wait? Are they going to wait for the Misty Mountains and Dunland maybe to kill Dale before they then swoop in to claim glory? That's what Eclipse did last time with his Morroquendi riders. No one really had an answer to those horse archers last time, not even the Shire's Great Eagles could be brought to bear effectively against them. That may prove to be the case again if Mirkwood do the same. Could Lindon still have something? Could they still have something like the Wardens of Elos Tyrion hidden away? The one thing we know for sure is Umbar only have one unit remaining. More than just one unit, they have one soldier remaining. One Alcarondas Legionnaire. Because of course we're viewing this from Inarius' perspective. He's going to take up position on this little hill and maybe watch proceedings. We also saw the snow trolls from the Misty Mountains as well, which is going to be important because it will help break the lines very effectively. They're also very quick, so it means they can engage speedily. And here, yes, this is what I was thinking. Once again, Eclipse is going to try and win the battle in a similar fashion by revealing horse archers that can hide late on. Bows of Emendwir. Maybe not quite as impressive as the Morroquendi bows. Morroquendi bows can defend themselves a little bit better, both from ranged attacks with slightly better armour, and in melee with their spears. The bows of Emendwir, a bit less so, but they do have the huntsman riding with them. So Mirkwood, definitely a fixture late on. Dale are probably best positioned to deal with Mirkwood, which Dunland and the Misty Mountains may wish to consider. I don't think Dunland have got what it takes to skirmish with that cavalry. In fact, they're probably the ones that are least equipped to deal with it, to be honest. A lot of Dunman units, which are like fish in a barrel, the Blackwolds as well. Horse archers, probably one of the best types of units you can use against berserker class units. And yes, the Spears of Orthanc will take a big beating from range because of their very heavy armour. But it's anyone's game still. Who knows? Maybe Umbar. Maybe this one brave soul can be the victor. We shall see. Dale though, tactical geometry in effect. I mean, if Mirkwood, Dunland, and the Misty Mountains come at them from all sides, they're doomed. Really, they really don't stand too much of a chance. Lake Town pikemen getting skirmished by the bows of Emendwir, but the Earls are coming in. Huntsman of Amon Lanka there as well. I mean, it's not... You could argue that the Earls can absorb all of this ammunition, and that's preferable from Dale's perspective. At this point, you have to sort of consider what's important. It's much better for these Earls to be the lightning rod for Mirkwood's ammunition here, and it's a good thing indirectly for the Misty Mountains and for Dunland as well. I am half expecting some Wardens of Elos Tyrion to pop in from nowhere. There are some Wardens of Amon Lank as well, so it's not as if Mirkwood only have cavalry. As I kind of suspected, they've got more strength at their back. Very strong foot archer, very strong axeman in melee as well. Mirkwood, though, they kind of need to hope that people sleep on them for the rest of this battle. They need to hope that the Misty Mountains and Dunland charge in here and wipe Dale away, and then they can come in to pick up the pieces. But the Misty Mountains are the ones that I would say are a problem here for everyone, because the Snow Trolls are quick, damaging. The Blackback Berserkers are, at this stage, probably the deadliest unit of infantry on the field because they're completely healthy and their attack is through the roof. I don't think... well, yeah, Dale definitely don't have anything. I mean, the Dalian Royal Guard are all well and good, but they are a hybrid unit, as are the Spears of Orthanc. Strong units, to be sure. Dunland, though, marching right into the face of Dale at this stage. And they're going to throw themselves in here. Someone has to make the first move, and Mr. Sneakman is going to be that man. And fair play to him as well. Performed very well, actually, Dunland, in this fight. Both of the battles they've been involved in thus far have gone quite well for them, actually. They were victorious against Mordor early on. They forced Mirkwood back. But I think they might not have enough manpower to be the ultimate winners in this battle. The Keldon Rule Patrol take a charge from Huntsman. The Bows of Emondwy are situating themselves quite nicely. The Earls come forward once again. It's a shame, really, that some of the bowmen weren't pointing in the direction of those Mirkwood cavalry. Dunman pikemen getting shredded. In come the Black Bolt as well. The Barding Herd are going to try and hold from the front. They'll be reliant on that phalanx, of course. I mean, to be fair, I think they should be pretty decently placed against Dunland Dale, but the issue was never really Dunland. The main problem was going to come from these lads. The foul folk of Moria, the goblins of the Misty Mountains, and especially the Blackbacks. 83 Blackback Berserkers at this stage in the battle is something which few people are going to want to get embroiled in, but Mirkwood can skirmish them down. Which is the problem here. I think Mirkwood have actually positioned themselves very craftily and very well, because now these three are ripping one another apart in melee. Mirkwood not losing anything, really. All they're doing, skirmishing, chipping away at whomever they please. Wardens of Amon Lank, strong in melee as well. So I think my prediction could... and again, like, this is a battle that was run before, so if they let Eclipse get away with this kind of skullduggery for a second time, then they are the ones to blame. Dalian Royal Guard defeat seems certain. Mountain Orc Berserkers, Goblin Infantry and Blackback Mountain Berserkers, 3 tiers of unit come crashing down upon the King's Guard of Dale. The Snow Trolls are in here as well, who in melee will do horrendous damage to the Earls. They won't do too well against the Swordmasters though, and as if to sort of acknowledge that, the Snow Trolls are going to back off. Dunland pretty much gone at this point. I mean, there's still some units over here. Dunland pikemen fighting hard, as are the Black Walls. The Spears of Orthanc still have ammo, which is pretty key, to be honest with you. I wouldn't count Dunland out just yet, because while they have ultimately failed in their attempt to destroy the Dalian front line, they were the ones to get things going, and I think it was a measured risk, because they can skirmish down the Misty Mountains, Mirkwood, but they may very well struggle mightily to do so against the Spears of Orthanc, because this is what they're all about. Heavy armour, crossbows, strength in melee. Might come down to the Wardens of Amon Lank having to get their axes bloody to truly deal with them. The Snow Trolls are in melee against the Dalian Bowmen, a softer target, and ultimately I think, much in the same way that Dunland were in the last 8-way free-for-all, they had their full strength available to them for the longest amount of time, but I think ultimately all that does really is paint a massive target on your back, and so I think it has turned out to be here, because all 3 of their main opponents at this stage in proceedings coming for them. I don't think anyone is fully out of proceedings yet. Well, actually, yes they are. Well, I'm not entirely sure actually, because the minimap does have a tendency to sort of go a little bit haywire in the later stages of these 8-way free-for-alls. So I'm not entirely sure actually who is still here and who isn't. One player has admitted defeat. I'd imagine that may very well be Gondor. Lindon is still here, getting in and amongst things. It would be the ultimate twist now if the Warns of Elos Tyrion were to come over the hill, and I kind of hope they do, to be honest with you. The Barding Herd charge in. Bold from the Bows of Amenduia there. I don't know if they're out of ammunition already, but it would be a bit of a problem for them if they are. Warns of Amon Lank charging in. We are into the dying embers of this fight now. A lot of Mirkwood's cavalry ended up dying off there. Spears of Orthanc still firing. Dale on their last legs, as you would expect. All of the armour piercing that the goblins had at their disposal going to be too much for them to deal with. The snow trolls are nearly spent, but ultimately Dale are going to be done. Blackback Mountain Berserkers have taken a few losses at this point, but they can rip through what's left of the Dalian Royal Guard. And again, keeping out of the fight for a long period of time is all well and good, but the other players will gang up on you if you do too much of that, as we saw with Dunland in the last version of this battle, and as we've seen with Dale this time. Sometimes, like the Misty Mountains, you could tell that what they were doing early on from now based on what they had hidden, just a sacrificial army. It's like, look guys, I'm charging in, I'm like participating in this fight. But it was always meant to be just a fight that took people's eyes off the goblins. Can they go on to win this fight ultimately? I'm not sure. I mean, to be honest with you, the goblins are actually falling apart in the face of Dale at this point. I think a large part of that does have to do with the fact that Mirk would have been over here skirmishing as well. But fair play to Dale. Goes to show how resilient they can really be. Spears of Orthanc now, going to be trying to shoot down the Bows of Amenduia. Can Dunland take it home? Spears of Orthanc might be the single most deadly unit on the field now, just because of their crossbows and how resilient they are. Look how many kills they got as well on the Bows of Amenduia there. Warns of Amon Lank still alive. Ultimately though, the time for subtlety has passed. The Blackbacks have pulled away. I mean, Dale withstood that, which is impressive. They aren't going to win, I don't think, because they still find themselves in between the other major players, but I mean, Eclipse can't really be on the periphery anymore in the way that I'm sure he would like to be with these units, and just sort of biding his time and waiting. Because ultimately, again, like these Earls of Dale coming in here, but they're not gonna. This is the unit I think I would have my eyes on. The Spears of Orthanc at this point might be too much of an obstacle for everyone else to overcome. But I think Dale, they may be playing the role of Kingmaker here. If they decide to kill the Spears of Orthanc, I think they hand the game to Mirkwood. If they continue to go after the Mirkwood units, I think they hand the game to Dunland. Possibly even the Misty Mountains. I think it's more interesting if they go after Mirkwood here, because I think that's the way that the game finishes more closely. And they are doing so more out of necessity than anything, because of the proximity of the Wardens of Amon Lank. But the axes will rain down. I think this is where Dale ultimately... Oof, that was a brutal death. It's a bit melodramatic actually, that man flying through the air, but there you go. Bows of Amenduia doing their thing. Spears of Orthanc with another volley. They're going to come charging in, the Horse Archers, but it's not going to go very well for them. Like, I'm not sure they're going to get many kills at all. The Spears of Orthanc will stand firm. The charge bonus on cavalry like this against a unit like the Spears of Orthanc just isn't going to be sufficient. There's 10 Dalian Royal Guard, one of them is over here somehow. There's one Horse Lord of Ulmo. Warp Riders are also getting in the way now. Bows of Amenduia rout. My prediction of Mirkwood is looking a bit dodgy at this point. The Warns of Amon Lank pull back. I think Eclipse there is playing Dale, because I think what he's just said is, disengage from me, go after the Spears of Orthanc, we don't stand a chance against them. Which is true, but you as Dale at this point, I think you have to accept the fact that you're done out here. You are not winning this battle. You don't have the quality to go up against either Mirkwood or Dunland, or the joker here in the pack is the Misty Mountains, because they still have their Blackbacks somewhere. I did see 50 odd of them before, and they are biding their time and they are waiting. Thing is, if they wait too long, they may find that the Wardens of Amon Lank still have ammunition, because I don't think they used it all. Also there, Dale betrayed. The naivety of Dale there to disengage from Mirkwood and go after Dunland, possibly trusting Eclipse, was his last mistake, really. And at this stage in a free-for-all, it's every man for himself, and I think Dale they were always doomed, but to go out with a backstab, they will be disappointed in that, but they have no one but themselves to blame. Spears of Orthanc, defeat seems certain for them. Have Dale handed this game to Mirkwood on a silver platter? Have they scuppered Dunland? Possibly. Still the small matter of this one horse Lord of Ulmo. If Lindon were able to win this battle, despite how poorly their initial fight went, that would be truly something. If those blackbacks are still alive, they should reveal themselves from behind that hill now, because like I said, I really think those wardens still have ammo, and if you allow them to get a few volleys off you, if you allow them to kite, it's going to be scary for you. The wargs getting into the bows of Emondwyr, routing off that Mirkwood cavalry, taking away Mirkwood's mobility, which is a big deal, because you can see there the wardens of Amon Lank are also pulling back. It's a real game of cat and mouse. No, it's not the Horse Lords. Well, there goes Dale.
Our men have captured the enemy general.
Dale are done.
Guard him well. Give the dog some wine, and be sure he can see us defeat the rest of his army.
In theory, what we have now are the Spears of Orthanc against the Wardens of Amon Lank. In theory. They didn't really get a full volley off there, unfortunately, but again, it's a multiple HP unit against a single HP unit, but I think the saving grace for Mirkwood here will probably be the fact that they have a very good AP infantry unit ultimately as well. And there goes Dunland's general. What happened to the blackbacks then? Do they still live? I believe they do. If not, I'm confused as to where they went, and we can have a little post-mortem to see if we can see a patch of their corpses somewhere, but yeah. Not a great fight for the Spears of Orthanc, and ultimately Dale were the ones that decided the outcome of this fight, like I said. They listened to Eclipse's poisonous words, clearly, and paid the price for it ultimately, and so too has Mr. Sneakman, unfortunately for him. The Warg Rider dies. Yeah, there they are, look. And that is, I think, a victory for the Misty Mountains, because the Spears of Orthanc are here. They bided their time, they slipped away when no one was looking, and now with one Snow Troll and 59 Blackbacks, that's going to be too much for the Wardens of Amon Lank to deal with, unless, of course, there's yet another hidden unit from somewhere. My prediction of Mirkwood's victory was close, but not quite correct, because ultimately the Misty Mountains have marshalled their strength well, and now the Blackback Berserkers will charge in. And as strong as the Wardens of Amon Lank are, they will be outdone by the Blackbacks, and there is still the matter of that one Snow Troll as well. Extremely close though, it's going to come down to just single units at this point. In comes the Trolls, the Troll disrupting the formation. But again, I do like these 8-way battles, they're a lot of fun. You have to really pace yourself, and you can see the politics of a free-for-all at work as well in them as well, more so I think than actually regular free-for-alls, because there are so many moving parts, there are so many different entities at play, that you really have to feign weakness more so I think than in a regular free-for-all. I think Dale, obviously they were seen as the biggest threat in the mid-game, and obviously they paid the price for that, just like Dunland did last time. The Misty Mountains, though, having enough here late on to ultimately be victorious. And fair play. King Amar will be the one to take this one home. I think the most naive approach on the field today was definitely Gondor. They were definitely the most straightforward approach, and it didn't really work out for them. Umbar was not too dissimilar to that, to be honest with you. They went all in quite quickly and paid a price that was similar. Lindon, again, another force which maybe didn't do quite as well as Engsfitz was hoping for, but it was definitely the other four armies at play. Dale, Mordor, I say Dale and Mordor, I'd say Dale, Dunland, Mirkwood, and of course the Misty Mountains were the four armies at play that really had an interesting dynamic going on in the late game there, and ultimately the Misty Mountains were able to marshal their strength the best. Highest kills on the field today were from Dunland, interestingly enough. They were going up against a Mordor army that was fairly numerous, and they were in full combat, I think, longer than most, so I think maybe that that does make a certain amount of sense. The lowest amount of kills actually for the Misty Mountains, and they ended up being the ultimate victor here. But they were going up against a quality-heavy Umbar force early on, and ultimately they ended up being sandwiched between them and Mirkwood, so that went poorly. Late on was when they probably got most of their kills, to be honest with you, and it ended up being enough to give them the win. So, let's see what did the damage for Umbar at the very least in that very bloody initial encounter. Castamir's Rangers up on that hill getting by far the most at 416, which is not too surprising. Alcarondas Legion being good on the front line as well. The cavalry less impressive. They were being used more defensively against Mirkwood earlier, and then they tried to help wipe away Mordor, but it went very poorly in the end, and Mordor was able to really dissolve Umbar's cavalry, which was a problem for them. But ultimately, Umbar, a bit of a footnote in this battle really. They got some impressive kill stats on some of their units, but ultimately King Ammar and the Orcs of the Misty Mountains victorious, and well played, I have to say. Always good to see some of these. This is obviously the second of two that were played in quick succession. I would imagine that this is the sort of thing which will become a bit of a regular fixture from now on. Like every now and then an 8-way free-for-all will happen. The arena is a very good map to do it on as well, but I would imagine that this is the sort of thing that you could make work on certain other maps as well, really, which would be really, really interesting, I think. But regardless, I think Kuro was the one that ultimately built the scenario. I think he was the one that sort of made the army compositions and put them on the map, and this was ultimately an entity of his making these 8-way free-for-alls, I believe. So we owe him a big thank you for making these possible. But big thank you to Blindness, I think it was, who sent this one to me, which is interesting considering he wasn't actually on the field today. We were seeing it instead from Inarius's perspective. So yeah, big thank you to all of the players that are a part of this. Big thank you to Kuro for making it. Big thank you to Blindness for sending it to me. Rather interesting mix of gratitude there, considering. But yeah, like I said in the previous replay, at this point I'm recording. Like this battle replay is probably like a week and a half away from actually releasing, so it becomes a little bit more hazy as to with regards to what's actually happening in the immediate future after this goes up. But regardless, like I said, 2 pre-records a week, 2 streams a week. That's kind of the schedule that I'm aiming for at this point. I think it's the best way. I could actually do more at this point, speaking now. When this replay comes out, to be honest with you, I think it'll be just a week out before university whirs into life again. But what I would say is I won't do more now because this is a schedule that I think I can stick to when university is up and running. So I think it's a good idea to get into that rhythm now and just sort of fit everything around it. And I think that will be most beneficial because it won't mean a sudden reduction in content. It will mean that we can just keep going. And in an ideal world, of course, depending on certain things, I can keep this going indefinitely, although February is D-Day really with regards to that, and we will have to sort of rethink things. The channel will not go anywhere, of course, and certainly the pre-records won't. They will be the thing I can do regardless of what happens, really. The streams are the thing which may have to be changed around a little bit depending on what happens, of course. But that's something for the far future. It's something that a channel update video can handle later on in the year. As for now, though, that is the plan, and I can't really offer more than that. I can say that the pre-records I'll be doing after this, I do still have a Siege on updated Grimslade, which will be coming, which was sent to me by Captain Gervais. I also have a Battle on the Iron Hills, which was sent to me by Vlasov, which I think I will be doing as well. Not so lore-friendly, but it's on a map that I like, and I think as well it should be quite competitive, so we'll see that in the future as well. And I also have a battle which someone sent me, I think, through Gritted Teeth more than anything else. It's kind of weird motivation. I may or may not show it based on the description of it I was given. We'll see, because I don't really want to go dunking on someone just because someone wants me to dunk on them, which I think was the motivation behind me being sent the replay. I'm not sure whether I'm in for that, to be honest with you. I mean, it kind of depends on what map it's on and sort of how everything's set up. It might be a decent battle in its own right anyway. So yeah, we'll see on that one. No promises. Regardless, once again, big thank you to everyone involved in this. Hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.